This is my monthly fish room tour for the month of September, and I have made a few changes trying to get things the way that I want them. Starting with one of my 8-gallon Betta fish tanks, as it's being completely rescaped this month and it's currently cycling ready to put Khuli the Betta fish in here. I read George Farmer's aquascaping book in August and it's really spiked my interest in the aquascaping side of the hobby. If all goes to plan, I would like to have 3 aquascaped Betta fish tanks and a couple of aquascaped Medaka tanks further down the line to help me practice and see how much I enjoy the actual aquascaping aspect of fish keeping. Khuli the Betta will be added to this tank once it's cycled, but he does have a really big tail and I do think he struggles with its weight from time to time, and he does like to have a lot of breaks. I've designed this aquascape to try and offer as many resting spots at different levels of the tank as possible. If all goes to plan, he's going to have a Monte Carlo carpet at the bottom to rest on, then some Sterigani repens and Bacopa Caroliniana as we work our way up the tank, then a needle leaf Java fern, and then at the top there'll be another needle leaf Java fern, some Limnophila and some Hygrophila. Unfortunately, one of the Anubias petites are melting, but I'm really happy with how the tank looks right now, and my main limitation has been using hardscape. That was just random bits that's been left over from other tanks. I'm trying to get down to Horizon Aquatics later this month or maybe early next month, and I want to get another one of these tanks to set up for a Betta fish, and I'll have a little play around in their hardscape room to try and find pieces of hardscape that are specifically chosen for this tank's dimensions. Moving on to my 40-gallon tank, and for the most part I'm really happy with this setup. I moved my chili rasboras over to this tank, but they may be leaving soon as one of my friends wants some of the chili rasboras for his new tank and it's very difficult to find them in my area right now. The corydoras in here have been constantly spawning for the last couple of months and their eggs have ended up all over the tank. Thankfully, my Siamese algae eater seems to really like the taste of corydoras eggs, so he basically just swims around and quickly eats all of the cory eggs as soon as they release them. My harlequin rasboras have thankfully calmed down a lot over the last week or two after spawning for pretty much a month solid, but activity levels do seem to be close to normal right now. I do feel bad for my cardinal and neon tetras, as all of the spawning activity in this tank seems to have scared them over the last couple of months and they pretty much just hide in the plant cover now. With any luck, they will start to come out of their hiding spots over the next month or two as things go back to normal, but only time will tell. I put some rejected Neocaridina shrimp from my breeding tanks into this tank a few months back, and there's at least one generation of babies in here, and a few days ago I saw 3 buried females at the same time. Unfortunately, the Echinodorus Reni and the Ludwigia mini super red do seem to be failing in this tank. There's a huge amount of Rotala rotundifolia in the back of this tank and it may be taking up a lot of the nutrients that the other plants need, so I am thinking of trying to remove a lot of the Rotala rotundifolia this month. Horizon Aquatics have some Echinodorus marble queen plants in, and I'm thinking of picking one of those up because it's basically the variegated variant of the Echinodorus fluidans that I already have in this tank, so I know that it does well with this water setup. If I can get my hands on one of them, then I'll probably put that in the back where a lot of the Rotala is right now and see how things go with the other plants. The Bucephalandra Kedagang, Anubias coffeefolia and Anubias petite are definitely getting overshadowed by the other plants in here though, and I am thinking of removing them from this tank and moving them to one of the other ones that I've got going. So moving across to my 29-gallon tank, and unfortunately I have lost 4 more guppies this month. I checked all 4 of the guppies for signs of infection, injury and any other obvious problems, but I really couldn't see anything wrong with them. I know that a lot of people have issues with modern guppies due to the inbreeding, but it's the only fish that I consistently have problems with and I'm really getting tired of losing them. I gave my friend's little girl some guppies a few months back and she's obsessed with the fish keeping hobby just like her dad, and she's got a brand new tank for her birthday, so I've said that she can have the guppies and Endler guppies in this tank once her new tank is cycled, as I just want rid of them now. I'm probably going to use this tank for my Medaka fry, but more on that one in a minute because things didn't go to plan with that, but it's good news in the long run. Just to touch on the shrimp in this 29-gallon tank, and again these are rejects from my breeding tank, and there's at least one generation of babies in here, and I'm pretty sure I saw at least one buried female the other day. The crypts and Echinodorus in this tank are starting to come in really nicely, and I absolutely love the colour of both of them. My Limnophila flora is starting to have issues in this tank, but I'm putting that down to me feeding less food due to having so few guppies in here now, so I have recently started to dose TNC Complete to try and give it all the nutrients it requires. So moving on to my 12-gallon tank, and it's been completely rescaped this month, and initially I was planning to keep my Medaka fry in here. Khuli the Betta fish and my chili rasboras used to live in here, but Khuli seemed to have some type of illness last month and I was really worried about him. He was consistently near the bottom of the tank hiding amongst the plant cover, and he seemed to have difficulty breathing, and I really didn't think he was going to make it. I moved him over to a temporary quarantine tank, mainly for observation but also for treatment if I could work out what was wrong with him, but thankfully after around a week of settling on the bottom in the quarantine tank as well, he seems to have just came back to normal. I didn't add any medication to the tank and I have no idea what caused the problem, but for around 2 weeks now he's been back to his normal self, swimming around and playing and begging for treats and food, so hopefully he's recovered and he's going to be fine. So I did decide to rescape this tank back when I thought Khuli was sick and wasn't going to make it, and I ordered a batch of Medaka eggs. When doing my research, I saw that some Medaka breeders advise customers that around 50% of the eggs won't hatch, and out of those ones that do hatch, 20 to 30% of the fry just won't make it. I tried to factor all of this in and I chose to order 15 Medaka eggs, expecting 5 to 6 adult fish out of that batch. The breeder ended up sending me 23 eggs and most of them ended up hatching, and 2 weeks after those hatched, from what I can tell, all of the fry is still alive. Now that is a lot more adult Medaka than I was initially planning, so I am thinking of moving the Medaka into my 29-gallon tank once the guppies are rehomed to my friend's little girl. And then I'm probably going to get some gold white cloud mountain minnows and put them into this 12-gallon tank. Moving on to my other 8-gallon Betta fish tank, and unfortunately Stitch's tail rot infection has gotten far worse the last month. The infection started developing around 2 months ago now, and initially I started to treat it with Isha 2000 as I've treated fin rot in other fish with it without issue, and he did seem to get better initially, but the last few weeks he's just been getting worse and worse very quickly. I started to dose Isha 2000, doubling the recommended dosing, and I also started to dose Melafix in the tank just to see what would happen, but unfortunately the situation is consistently getting worse. Shout out to plenty of Bettas from Instagram for being so helpful, as she's recommended some treatments that I'm trying now and I hope they'll be able to help. The majority of the advice that I got was from people in the United States or Asia, where they can easily get hold of pet medications that have antibiotics in them, but they're actually illegal here in the UK. So unfortunately a lot of the advice that I got was good, I just wasn't able to use any of it. If there's one thing I've learned from trying to treat this infection, it's to get advice from someone experienced in your home country as quickly as possible, because they'll have treatments that you can also get. Right now I am dosing a combination of different treatments. With any luck, Stitch will get better and make a full recovery, but only time's going to tell on that one, but I am sticking to the plan and I'm keep dosing as requested by the instructions on the medication. So moving across to my shrimp rack, and I'm going to change how I run these tanks, as it's an absolute pain to remove low grade shrimp with the way I've built this out. I'm happy to keep overflow shrimp and low grade shrimp in here, but I do want to try and catch as many of the higher grade shrimp as possible, especially from the Cherry and Bloody Mary lines, and put them into plastic breeding tubs with hornwort and water lettuce. In theory, that should let me breed a lot of high quality shrimp over the coming months, and that was my plan for these tanks, but it's just too complicated to get the low grade shrimp out of the breeding lines. I will probably try and get 1 male and 2 female Medaka from different lines and keep them in each of these shrimp tanks as well, with the overflow shrimp to try and breed the Medaka. Just to quickly touch on my Wallstad cherry shrimp tank, as everything's going well in here and I actually really like the way it's looking right now. I did end up removing all of the Salvinia floating plants from this tank because some of the Christmas moss was starting to have issues and I thought it might be due to light penetration. So far it's actually been a good decision, as all the Christmas moss is back to its dark green colour and it hasn't had any issues since. The cherry shrimp in this tank have been breeding like crazy again this month, and there's plenty of baby shrimp in here and there's a fair few buried females kicking around as well. I actually gave a bunch of these shrimp away to my friend's daughter for her original guppy tank earlier this month, but you really can't tell because of how many shrimp are in here now and how quickly they are breeding. Moving down to my Bloody Mary shrimp tank, and the pearlweed in here has performed far better than I ever thought it would. Pearlweed is commonly listed as needing moderate lighting to grow efficiently, and this tank runs off a very cheap low powered Ciora light, but the pearlweed has just taken over the tank. Unfortunately, it's basically impossible to remove any low grade shrimp from this tank because there's just so many hiding spots for the shrimp in here. I am probably going to rescape this tank, or I might try and cut the pearlweed really far back and see how that goes, because if I do put my Medaka into this tank, I also want them to have spaces where they can freely swim around, but time will tell what I do because I actually really like the way this pearlweed looks. There's also a mystery baby fish in here, and I think its egg was accidentally moved across to this tank when I moved the floating plants into here when I set it up, but thankfully the fry seems to be doing really well and it's eating fry food when I add it. It's still too small for me to work out what species of fish it actually is, but I'm going to have to try and set up a plastic tub with a heater in it soon, because this will be a tropical fish and all of these shrimp tanks are unheated. Moving down to my orange Neocaridina shrimp tank, and I added the potted Limnophila a couple of weeks back now to try and deal with some bacteria blooms clouding the water. So far it seems to have helped slightly, but every few days it does look better and better, so hopefully I'll be able to deal with all the excess nutrients in here. Last month I mentioned that I could see the ovaries on all of the shrimp in this colony, confirming that they were female, so I decided to add another 10 shrimp to try and get a male in there and get some breeding going. There's definitely at least one female carrying eggs in here, and I'm pretty sure I saw 2 at the same time a few days back, but one of them was in the plant cover and it was difficult to make out if she definitely had eggs. This is another tank that I'm probably going to rescape in the future, as the current setup was more of an experiment with moss to see how it would work, but I do want to rescape it before I try and put some Medaka in here with some shrimp. Next up is my yellow Neocaridina tank, and I'm classing this one as a failed experiment, as my initial idea was to try and see how the Eliocharis would do with the shrimp, but it's just not really grown under this light, so I'm just going to write this one off and rescape it. There's plenty of breeding going on in here, and I gave around 10 of these shrimp away this month as well, so I'm happy with how the shrimp are performing. Finally, we have my shrimp jars, and I also ordered 2 new shrimp bowls to play around with too. I'm going to upload a dedicated video on this specific jar soon, because the shrimp have been breeding like crazy in here, and there's so many shrimp in there now and they move around so quick I have no idea how many are in there. I'm actually shocked by how quickly these shrimp have bred to such a high number in such a small volume, so I am probably going to move a lot of these over to my yellow Neocaridina tank just to stop any overpopulation. I am probably going to rescape the tank as well, purely because these small jars and the bowls that I've ordered are cheap and quick and easy to rescape, letting me get some practice in for the aquascaping side of the hobby and try some new things that I haven't tried before without having the large costs of an actual tank. Anyway guys, that brings the video to an end. Thanks for watching and have a good day.